So this is the economic system, hence slavery is very vital. Now if you look at social aspects again, how the social system was present, how the social system was present in the ancient Greek society. The social system is very hierarchical in nature. Hierarchy existed in nature in the social systems, and it was divided into classes. Classes. What is that class? The so-called landlords versus laborers. Landlords are called as masters, laborers are called as slaves. I already said this, right? So the social system is having two classes, masters versus slaves in the ancient Greeks. And there is a clear inequality that existed between masters and slaves. Hence, Greek society is highly unequal society. And inequality is what many people say, many thinkers say, inequality is natural. This type of inequality is natural. It is not only natural, but they say that, thinkers say that it is desirable. Without inequality, we cannot sustain the economy. That is the clause that these people have said, and this is why they supported slavery. So, the social system, you have hierarchy, you have classes, that is landlords versus laborers, that is masters versus slaves. As a result, there is huge inequalities between masters and slaves. Now, many people consider that inequality is not only natural in the Greek societies, but it is very desirable to run the economy. And this is the reason when you look at Plato and Aristotle, they were strong advocates of slavery. They supported slavery. In what sense? They said that inequality is not only natural. Why it is natural? Because in the process of evolution of history, or in the process of evolution of human beings, there will be few people who will be having lands and few people who will be working on lands. So this is natural. But what they say is this is not only natural, but this is desirable. Hence, they justified slavery. Why it is desirable in order to run the whole economy? They said that this system is very important. So one system is hierarchy is present where there is class differences. Because of this, there is inequality in the Greek societies. One more thing is the Greek societies is highly patriarchal in nature. Patriarchal in nature. So patriarchal society, that is male dominated society. Male dominated society, and women were confined to the four walls of a room. They were confined to the four walls of a family. They were not allowed to come out and participate in the state activities. So they were confined to the four walls. Hence, we cannot see women's participation in public sphere. No participation in public sphere or politics, because they were confined only to family. Now, Indian society is also more or less the same thing, right? Patriarchal. Next, they are Greek citizens are known as, or Greeks are known as ethnocentric people. Ethnocentric people. What is this ethnocentric people? They consider their cultures as superior. Ethnocentric. Their ethnicity is superior, their culture is superior, and they consider that cultural superiority of themselves exists, and they follow racism. What is this racism? Greeks treat people live outside, people who are living outside Greek. are barbarians. So they only think that in Greek cities, whoever is present, they are highly advanced, their culture is highly advanced, whereas people living outside the Greek cities are known as barbarians or uncivilized people. This is what the social system is present. Hence, in order to understand first Plato and Aristotle, what you have to understand is you have to understand how the society was there, how the system was there, in the ancient Greeks. So I said that Western political thought, if you do remember the definition of thought, I said that thought is thinking of an age. You have to understand what is the thinking of age and space, right? How people used to think in a particular age and particular time. That you have to know. For that, for that Greek political thought, you have to understand what exactly is the thinking of the people, how the society was organized in ancient times. Now, in order to understand Plato and Aristotle, what you have to understand is you have to understand the ancient Greek societies. If you look at the ancient Greek societies, how it is composed of, look at first thing, again I am repeating, ancient Greek societies are organized in the form of city states. Now, when you compare city states to the modern nation states, city states are very small in their entities or small entities, and they are highly decentralized, and each city state is self-sufficient. As a result, as they are very small, there is no much difference between state and politics in this Greek society. Because of this, when Aristotle has said this man is a social animal, he also said that because of there is no difference between society and polity, he also said that man is by nature a political animal. Hence, in Greek society, there is no difference between social and politics. That is first thing. The second thing is economic system, agrarian economy. People are running on agriculture. As a result, you require labor. For that, slaves are important. Hence, slave have functional utility in Greek cities. That is, slaves have one function to work on farm. Social system, it is very hierarchical in nature. Class differences exist, inequalities exist. Inequality is not only natural but desirable. As a result, slaves are or slavery is justified by these thinkers. The society is very patriarchal in nature, which means it is a male dominated society. Women were confined to the four walls of the family, and then they do not participate in public sphere. This is one thing that you have to understand, which we will use subsequently. Ethnocentric people, they consider themselves as their culture as the superior race. They consider people who are living outside as the so-called barbarians. This is the state of Greek at the time of Plato and Aristotle. Now let's go to the first thinker called Plato. Plato. Now Plato is known as the father of political philosophy. Now Plato was a disciple of Socrates. Socrates is known as the father of philosophy. Father of philosophy is Socrates, whereas Plato is the father of political philosophy. Hence, as Plato is a disciple of Socrates, you have to study about Socrates to understand Plato. That is the first thing. Hence, you will be knowing this, or I said this. Socrates is the teacher, or Plato is the disciple of Socrates. Aristotle is the disciple of Plato. So they are having three linkages. So in order to understand these two thinkers, you have to understand about Socrates, you have to understand Greek way of life. I have already said Greek way of life. Now we have to understand what Socrates is actually. Now, in order to understand Socrates, you can understand Socrates from the statement given by Plato. Plato said Socrates as the wisest man on this earth. Wisest man on earth. This is the statement given by Plato to Socrates. So Plato considered as the wisest man on earth. Now, what do you mean by wise? Wise means having or showing experience. A wise man has experience, shows experience, and he has knowledge, and he is very good in judgment. So a wise man has wide experience, he has the knowledge, and he has a good judgment. Then you call him as a wise man, right? So Plato said that Aristotle is the wisest man on the earth. Now, next, why Socrates is known as the father of philosophy, or why so-called Plato called Socrates as the wisest man? Now, if you want to understand that, you have to understand why Socrates is called as the father of philosophy. You have to understand, in order to understand why he was called as the wisest man, you have to understand Socrates itself. Now, according to Socrates, philosophy is nothing but search for truth. Philosophy is search for ultimate truth. What is the truth? Search for reality. What exactly is reality? Right. Now, if you look at Socrates, he was around 300 BC. In Indian context, you have one thing called Gautam Buddha by this point of time. Buddha also went in search of truth. Hence, Buddha is also known as the wise man. Gautam Buddha, the enlightened one, right? Next. So, they are contemporary. Socrates and Buddha almost contemporaries. Hence, both are known as wise men. In the Indian context, Buddha is known as that wise man, whereas in Western political thought, Socrates is called as such. Now, if I keep Indian context aside, coming to this, now, philosophy is nothing but search for truth or reality. Now, the thing is, how search for truth began, how this began. Now, the search for truth or humanity began in search for element of human nature. They studied human nature. If you understand human nature, you'll understand the reality. Now, what they say is the search for human nature or the search for philosophy, the search for truth started by humans because humans have two things. One is called reason and passion. Humans have reason and passion. As a result, they always search for truth. Now, this is what it makes a human different from an animal. Socrates said this. What is the difference between human and animal? Humans have highest form of reason and highest form of passion. As a result, by human nature, they search for reality, and this search for reality is called as the so-called philosophy. No. So the reason means questioning. Questioning is a product of intellectual curiosity. Intellectual curiosity. Questioning is an intellectual curiosity, and this can be satisfied by applying reason. So, curiosity, if you are curious about to know the things, your reason will develop. And humans are intellectually curious. They wanted to enhance their intellect by knowing the things. As a result, they have that reason and they have that passion to know the things, what is happening around me, what exactly is the correct thing. So, as they are having these things, by human nature, humans themselves search for truth. That is what the thing is. So as humans have this, they started beginning for search of truth. Say for example, uh, in the West, people are very curious to know about what is life, what is good life. So in the East, like India, we studied about the so-called, again in the form of religion, we studied extensively about religion, and we have said about the so-called what makes good life. But the only difference between religion and philosophy is based on logic, but religion is based on faith. After searching for good life, people blindly follow the religion. But philosophy is something which is based on logic. And religion does not promote the so called questioning over a period of time. But philosophy promotes questioning. That is the only difference between the West and East. Right? Now, why Socrates is known as the father of philosophy? Because he is the man who has kept all his life in his intellectual curiosity. He always went for searching of what is truth or what is reality. Hence, they went for, or Socrates went for searching this thing, and he has said that, Socrates said that if you are not searching for truth, if you are not examining your life, if you are not examining life, an unexamined life is unworth living. Unworth living. What does this mean? He is saying that being humans, you should have intellectual curiosity. Why intellectual curiosity? Because reason can be satisfied. If you want to satisfy your reason, you should have intellectual curiosity. And if you are having the reason, if you are called a human being, you should have the reason and you should have the passion to know the things. Hence, if you do not have these two things, you are unworth living as a human being. That is what Socrates has said. Now, how Socrates went for this or satisfying this intellectual curiosity, how he has searched the so called search for the truth, how he has searched it. He has searched it by a concept called by a concept called questioning, reasoning, debating. So by debating the things, Socrates started telling the truth. So he used to question, he used to debate the things. As a result, in that debate, in that discussion, he used to evolve the so called truth. Right? Given in this context, they call this as he has questioned the thinkers, as he has questioned the times. Hence, Socrates is known as the founder of philosophy because he is the first man to come out with philosophy, or he is the first man to think about this. Now, what? So why you call them as the father? Does this mean that before Socrates there is no person who has not given a thought of philosophy? No, before Socrates, what was the thing? In the pre-Socrates time, in the pre-Socrates time, the universe or the entire age is divided into two spheres, right? Next, that is called, the universe is divided into physical part and spiritual part. So people before Socrates used to thought that the entire universe is divided into physical part and spiritual part. Now, physical part means which can be absorbed by our senses. Absorbed by our senses. physically. For example, sun is visible, moon is visible. Spiritual part, which cannot be seen. For example, it requires a reason to understand. It requires contemplation to understand. You have to contemplate to understand the spiritual part. For example, you can see moon, but in order to understand why moon is a god, moon is god. This is invisible. Many people consider moon as god, but that god is not visible. Right? In order to understand that, it requires spiritual part. So the first set of scholars in the world, in the Western societies, is first set of scholars in ancient Greek cities are known as physicists. Physicist. What is a physicist? Those who study the physical part of the universe. Those who study the physical part of the universe are known as physicists. Right? Now, so they believe in the so-called physical part, and they just are observing what is present in the world, and they are not contemplating what is the reason for that presence. So hence they were just giving importance to what they can see, what can they can hear, what they can taste, and they did not give importance to invisible domains. Invisible domains. Right. This is how the first set of scholars used to be present before Socrates. Before Socrates, these thinkers are present, and they used to give this idea. Whereas when it comes to Socrates, Socrates started questioning the spiritual part. Now look at this. The first set of scholars, physicists, what they said, whatever they observed, they said it as true. Whatever they couldn't observe, they said that that is invisible, that is not present. They used to not accept, rather they used to accept blindly. If they were accepting, they used to accept blindly without any contemplation. Now Socrates has started questioning this. Socrates has started questioning the so-called spiritual part, which is not visible. Which is not visible. Now, based on that, he started questioning the physicists. Hence, until that point of time, until Socrates, all the thinkers who are present, they were just seeing the reality, they were just seeing what is appearing, and they started their their thinking. Whereas Socrates is the first person who has thought about this. Now, people who study the so-called this thing, that is called, who contemplate which is not visible, they are known as Sophists. So, the second tradition of thinkers in Greek was Sophists. First one was physicists, second one were Sophists. Now, Sophism began with Socrates. Sophism began with Socrates. Now, they study not only the physical part of the earth, but they try to understand exactly whether this physical part is correct, or is it having any inefficiencies or incorrectedness. For example, they say that earth is at the center, moon used to, or sun used to revolve around the earth. But many people after that said sun is at the center, earth is used to revolve. So they used to say either it is the earth which is at the center, or whether it is sun which is at the center. They used to believe. But the rest of the people, they used to just look, and they used to look and see that okay, sun is revolving, it is not earth. Right? Just by looking at the nature, they used to say that. That is called physicists. But these people, they started questioning whether exactly is it earth which is revolving, or either it is sun which is revolving. So this way of thinking is known as Sophism. Right? But physicists have just observed and they have thought. As they started contemplating what exactly is correct, they were in search of knowledge, they were in search of truth, and then if you are in search of the truth, then you call it as a philosophy. As Socrates is the first person to search for this, Socrates is known as the father of philosophy. Now, so if you think at this, Sophists believe this one, knowledge and truth. Sophists have not only confined their ideas to the so-called nature, but they also started thinking about the quality of life. Now, quality of life. They studied about what is a good life, what constitutes a good life. So they started studying about this. In that good life, in questioning of that good life, they started studying about how a king has to be, how citizens has to be in order to be happy. Hence, Sophism or Sophists are called as first professional teachers. They taught the students how to think about a good life, how to think and not just blindly accept what you are seeing. They started questioning everything and they started questioning their children or students. As a result, Sophists are known as first professional teachers. Now, where did Sophism emerge actually? Where did Sophism? I said in Greek there was before pre-Socrates time there were physicists. Along with Greek, there was one more city called Athens. Along with Greek, there was one more thinking called Athens, and Sophism emerged, or the roots of Sophism emerged in Athens. Why in Athens? Because Athens at that time was a democratic state. Democratic state. Greek is non-democratic state. They considered superior about their culture. They considered their principles are correct one. As a result, Athens is a democratic state. They started in a democratic state. You will have the freedom to question. You'll have the freedom to question. Now, in their freedom to question, they started questioning the imbibed values, and slowly, knowledge prevailed in Athens. Hence, this is how Athens started growing compared to Greek. So Sophism was widespread in Athens. Now this Sophism was brought to Greek by Socrates. By Socrates. As a result, as Western political thought is nothing but understanding Greek political thought started with the so-called Socrates thinking. Hence, the so-called Socrates is known as father of philosophy because in the Greek, philosophy was started by Socrates. How he has started this? Because of his intellectual curiosity, he started questioning the things. As he started questioning the things, intellectuality has driven. He is searching for truth. As he is searching for truth, you can say that he is the father of philosophy. As he is searching for truth, he is searching for the real knowledge. So, in his quest for real knowledge, he has evolved, and that is the reason why he has become the wisest man on earth, as per Plato. This is what Socrates is. Now, this is how Socrates started thinking about the so called Western political thought. Or this is how Plato considered this person as his wisest man. The question is now, what exactly made or Socrates, uh, Plato to consider Socrates as the wisest man? This is why he is considered as wisest man. Now, what happened over a period of time? As Socrates is introducing one culture called debate and discussion in the Greek cities, this was not liked by the physicists. Physicists, they don't like questioning. As they do not like questioning, whenever Socrates used to question, they do not have answers. Hence, Socrates has become their enemy over a period of time. Now, having got upset with Socrates' behavior, they have charged Socrates saying that he is corrupting the young minds of Greek cities, corrupting the young minds. And then he was charged to death. He was charged to death. Why? For just questioning. Why? Questioning is not liked by physicists of that time. Now, because of this, Socrates started questioning. As a result of this corrupting, he was sentenced to death. And Socrates' death has resulted in Plato's anger. Why? Socrates was condemned to death because of questioning. This is how there has been huge influence of Socrates on Plato. Socrates is Plato, right? Hence, Plato has risen from the ashes of Socrates. So, whatever Socrates has taught, Plato used to give this. Hence, having upset with the mentality of the physicists which were present in Greek city, he started framing how the state has to be. By looking at the death of his teacher, why the death of his teacher? Because his teacher questioned. As they questioned, they have killed him. Now, looking at the death of his teacher, Plato became angry and he started propounding his theory about what is a state, what is a good state. This is how Plato started coming out and proposing his ideologies. Right? So, what I have discussed so far, I said Western political thought starts with Plato and Aristotle, and whatever Western political thought is there is footnotes of Plato and Aristotle because they have studied everything and left almost nothing for the other thinkers to study. Hence, other thinkers are giving commentaries on Western political thought, that is Plato and Aristotle. Now, in order to understand Plato and Aristotle, I said you have to understand the times of Greek at that point of time. There was two city-states at that famous city-states like Greek and Athens. Athens were very logical people. They are called as Sophism or Sophists, whereas Greeks are called as physicists. I said, what is the difference between physicists and Sophism? That depends upon how you look at the universe. Universe is visible, invisible part. Visible part, whatever it appears to the naked eye, those who consider that without questioning, that is called physicists. Those who look at the invisible part and they question, they are called Sophism. Sophism has been spread in Athens because it is a very democratic state. As a result, Sophism has spread. The same thing was brought to Greek by the so-called Socrates. As a result, Socrates is known as the father of philosophy. What is philosophy? Philosophy is search for truth, and truth can emerge only when you are questioning. As Socrates is questioning all the things, he was allowed to go for capital punishment. When he was killed by the state, Plato got very angry and he has started propounding his theory based on the ashes of the so-called Socrates. This is how Plato started propounding about the thinkers, about the state. Right? Now, this made Plato to think about what exactly is a good state. So thinkers actually say that whatever is Platonic, whatever is Platonic is actually Socratic. Or they also say whatever is Socratic is actually Platonic. Why they give this statement? Whatever is Platonic is actually Socratic, whatever is Socratic is actually Platonic. What does this mean? This means the main character in Plato is Socrates. The main character, the building block of Plato's philosophy is Socrates. As a result, whatever is Platonic, it is actually Socratic. Whatever Socrates used to say, that is found in Plato. Hence, there is no difference between what is Platonic and what is Socratic. At times, people also say that there is no such thing called Socrates. Socrates never existed, but it is an imagination of Plato, right? So people said, or many critics said that there is no person called Socrates. Actually, he was an imagination of Plato. So this is how the myth says, but political science says that Socrates is father of philosophy, Plato is father of political science, right? This is why they use the term that is called whatever is Platonic, it is actually Socratic. Whatever is Socratic, it is actually Platonic. So if they ask this statement, how to write? Because everything that Plato has studied has come out of the product of Socrates, because Socrates is the main character in the writings of Plato, or Plato emerged through the character of Socrates. So this is the thing. So many people consider that Plato has created Socrates, but Socrates never existed on the earth. That is what few conception is, but no need to remember that until remember this. No, based on this thinking, Plato started emerging about the things. Now, Plato is an idealist. Let's try to understand Plato. Plato is an idealist. So what we have to study in Plato is, you have to study about few things in Plato. What are those things? What is an idealist thinker? And then you have to study about what is state according to Plato. What makes the state a very good state? In order to make a good state, the state has to be ruled by a philosopher king. In order to prepare a king to be a philosopher, what he has propounded is, look at the human nature. By looking at the human soul, he said that you should have one thing called, look at human soul, and based on the human soul, you can classify people. And based on this classification, he has supported slavery. And he also said, in order to prepare a philosopher king, education is important. Right? Now, education, highest level of education is required for philosopher. Now, if there is anything left, if there is anything called desires left in the king, even after education, you have to overcome that by following communism. And he said that in a good kingdom, philosopher kings will rule. And then he has said that, what about the people? People has to follow their duty. So he said that about citizens also. He said about citizens also. Now, how he has said all these things? He has said all these things by conceptualizing one thing called philosophy of ideas. Look at what is the actual reality.